We're on the cusp of the first enhanced games, and we're going to take this really seriously. I don't want any jokes about swimmers drowning because they started getting a back pump mid-stroke. I don't want any jokes about MMA fighters getting boners from Trendick while they're in somebody's guard. We are on the cusp of transhumanism as we know. It's a very serious topic, so I'm going to take it seriously. So we're going to answer a couple questions, and you can follow along with the timestamps. We are going to talk about the claims being made by the people running the first enhanced games, which are slated to start at the end of next year, 2025. They claim it's going to be safer. They're going to take care of athletes. It's actually going to push human achievement further. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the very real arguments that exist against it. Is it going to incentivize drug use? Are health risks going to increase exponentially? Are kids going to be incentivized to take it? And then lastly, we're going to talk about what we can realistically expect. Is this going to be something that shifts our view of performance enhancement forward and takes sport to the next level? Is it going to be a big wet fart? Is it going to just be a disaster, a dumpster fire? We're going to get to that one by one. First of all, don't forget, Big Dreams, Bad Jeans tees are back in stock, barbellapparel.com. Through the 4th of July, we're doing a $100 gift card giveaway. We have 3 of them. Just got to go to basestrength.com, download the app from there, take the questionnaire, and you are in the running.
I learned some key statistics. 44% of Olympians admit to using banned performance-enhancing drugs within the last year, according to research commissioned by the World Anti-Doping.
44%.
44%.
And the other, probably lying.
Are losing. Yeah, exactly. And so, and then I learned that the average American Olympian only earns $30,000 a year. And I thought to myself, there's something really wrong in the system. And instead of, trying to reform it, let's take a blank slate of paper and invent the third Olympiad from scratch.
So to start out with the enhanced games, this is Aaron D'Souza, the most soft-spoken person you could ever find to be the spokeshole for something like the enhanced games. You would think Hulk Hogan or somebody that's like Macho Man Randy Savage, but no, we have this guy who is just so carefully soft-spoken. And as a PR move, I think that's brilliant. It de-cartoonifies the whole endeavor. I'm not saying that it makes it more legit, but it certainly comes off better. They could have gone the other way, guys. They could have made this just the XFL of the Olympics and gotten a whole bunch of Vince McMahon, Jesse Ventura types to just come out and church it up. That also would have been worth watching. But it looks like they're trying to sell it as, and maybe take it seriously as, a better alternative to what the Olympics are. And that's not really a hard thing to sell because the Olympics are kind of a tragic joke in a lot of ways. Now, the promotional tour hinges on a couple of arguments, a couple of claims that they're making. He always starts out talking about the 44% of Olympic athletes that have used some banned substance, basically saying WADA can't do shit athletes are using anyways. They want to use, let's give them an outlet to use. Now, that doesn't mean 44% were popping check drops before they went up to compete. It means that they're using anything that was on the insanely, absurdly long list of banned substances. I mean, it is a joke because on the one hand, you have this puritanical approach that the IOC uses. Like, you have ridiculous things. Like, I think caffeine is actually considered a banned substance. You have people getting metal stripped for taking cough syrup, like really stupid shit. And that's juxtaposed, that like puritanical approach, with the actual fuckery that goes on in front of everybody's face. We have the documentary Icarus that shows what goes on with state-sponsored doping programs, the officials that get paid off. There's people in WADA and people in the Olympic Committee that are paid off. So it's like the epitome of unfair, because not only can you be guaranteed that people are using, but people are using in the context of having entire superpowers and organizational heads in their corner fighting for them. So it's really ridiculous. So, okay, guys, so many people are using anyways. It's not a clean sport by any stretch, even by their definition of clean. In addition to that, there's like a, $30,000 average income for these athletes, which is absolutely absurd. You're an Olympic athlete and that's what you're making. So they're like, let's let them use the way they want to use. Let's fill this niche in the market for something that people probably want to see. The athletes definitely want. And hey, let's actually take care of them the way that professional sports tend to do.
The solution is not to do drug testing. It's to do health testing. We want to make sure that our athletes are healthy and safe to compete. So we do cardiac screenings, MRIs, blood work to measure their biomarkers to ensure that they're within healthy ranges. And that's the core difference, right? The drug testing apparatus at the Olympics is about fairness in competition. It's not about the health and safety of athletes.
Now, one of the big claims is about fairness. You said repeatedly, testing is about fairness, not safety. So one question is, if you could actually successfully make safety a priority and you could actually see improvements, let's say ending the prohibition and taking it out of the shadows, like so many other domains where prohibition was applied, zero tolerance policies were taken up, and things are worse because people are doing it the worst possible way in the shadows. The prohibition has a horrible track record for doing that. That's one of the arguments against zero tolerance. If we could take it into the light, maybe develop new technologies that keep athletes safer, maybe have protocols for testing them to where it's not really practical to bypass it, more so than just regulating your dose. It's possible that could be the case. And if we actually got better markers, would that change anybody's mind? I think there is a puritanical aspect of natural competition that's going to hold their Amish-like views that people should never use this technology because for some reason this line in the sand is too far and it's not testing the things that they want to see tested. And that's fine, but if that's your spot, you have to be very upfront and say, hey, I don't care about the health aspect of steroids. It's not that it's dangerous or it's not that it's leading to this unnecessary risk. That has to go away from your argument toolbox, and you have to say there are just things that I don't want to see people doing to improve their performance, improve their outcome beyond a certain level because, and then you can fill in that argument. There's a very weird thing that happens where we have started to use our intuition about what we think is cheating to draw these lines in the sand about what is too far to where we've stigmatized anything that can actually make you better, which is very bizarre considering all the things in our society that make us worse that we have no problem with, and we might actually fight with people if they say that there is a problem. Reckless sexual behavior, alcohol. They covered this part in the show where they talked about how alcohol is like the number one drug as far as risk. It outpaces heroin by like a big amount.
In the UFC, they don't even let them rehydrate with IVs anymore. But the problem with that is like IVs are good for you. Like, this is really stupid. Like, don't stop someone from doing something that's going to make them healthier while they're in a business that's about as dangerous as you can get without people shooting at you.
People at least aware, and then you can decide, by the way, that you drink alcohol. I'm not saying I would ban alcohol,
right,
but I think people should be aware.
Isn't it crazy that
what they're doing?
Yeah, totally.
So it's all about education and awareness.
Look at the drop between alcohol and heroin.
Yeah.
Heroin's way less bad for you than alcohol.
So, by the way, but I want to be careful because that actually what got him in political trouble because one magazine wrote, which is, by the way, the wrong takeaway, said, oh, the drug advisor of the UK government said heroin, take heroin on alcohol, whatever. Heroin is the second worst.
Alcohol devastates communities, contributes to domestic violence, many drunk driving accidents. If you've ever been to like a reservation or some poor town ravaged by alcohol use, the shit's ugly, and we have no problem like promoting it to our youth. We have an entire culture, music, TV shows, movies that celebrate party culture. We send kids off to school to get shit-faced 5 nights a week as like a rite of passage. And that's to point out that people like to think that their lines in the sand are based on a really clear-cut algorithm, and they spend a lot of time thinking into the ground and kind of checking every angle to make sure that their ethic is really tightly woven. And that's not true for anybody. Everybody's making it up based on intuition, the few talking points that stuck in the back of their head, and many people are willing to incur huge amounts of risk for things that offer zero benefit.
For students or whatever, oh, it's bad if you try to be the best. Like, and why is a substance, modafinil, which is, by the way, widely studied, which is there since decades. Every single neuroscientist in my team, in my biotech sector, I talk to is like, this can be taken safely in moderate amounts, like, and all of that. Why are we like shying away to discussing that this is a good thing? Like, I don't even understand it.
So the idea that things like stimulants or things that might help your memory or concentration in school when you're trying to be, I don't know, a fucking medical doctor, that's a taboo. We don't want people doing that. That for performance, to compete longer in your career, to be able to heal faster. They outlawed BPC 157. That shit grew my bicep tendon back in like 2.5 weeks. Things are being stigmatized that allow athletes to go farther, to heal faster, to do more for the time they're here. Things anybody who breaks themselves as part of their career, not a hobby, not something they can pick up and do whenever and drop whenever, that has no stakes associated with it. literally something that is your entire life. People that break themselves want to leverage technology to do what they can. So it's a very important question. If you could see health effects improve over time by bringing this stuff out of the shadows, would that change anybody's mind? And it would be very interesting to see where people end up kind of shifting their view as far as that. Now, there's another question of if they can do that anyways, because as long as you're having rules and banning people for violating the rules, you have to have lines in the sand. Those are going to create their own gray area. Zach Tellender had a really good bit on this, talking about that.
What sort of systems are you going to have in place if they're not healthy? How do we know what is healthy and what isn't healthy? We can look at biomarkers, but at the same time, we're here to test athletes. You could draw Steph Curry's blood right now, and you would say, oh man, his T3 levels are off, or some random biomarker is off. And if he was participating in the enhanced games, like, what does that mean? What you're creating is a massive gray area.
So yeah, they can say all they want that they're checking for these markers. The question is, how are they enforcing it? Are athletes going to be able to bypass that the way they bypass other tests? And at the end of all of it, what are we going to see as far as athletes having better or worse health effects? And to what degree are they going to hold themselves accountable for that? Right now, it feels like kind of hollow marketing. Now, I think it does have a real potential to make things safer by bringing it out of the dark. Anything with zero tolerance or prohibition has a fucking horrendous track record. Anywhere where you've seen prohibition, you have seen some negative outcome where keeping things in the dark has led to less safeguards. It's led to people doing things with less information and less health outcomes. That's always been an argument against prohibition, against zero tolerance. I could absolutely see advances in technology if this does take off, where you do get safer drugs, or you do get better testing protocols, or you can weigh out the risk versus reward based on more specific, let's say, genetic factors. People respond differently. There's a whole bunch of things we don't know about biology that this might actually bring to the front, allowing everybody to benefit from things that take our biology farther without all of the negative externalities. And again, it begs a question of, is that something that you or people at large want? I think people at large want, but there's going to be individuals that take issue with that no matter what the health outcomes are. Now, it's also possible that until we get to that point, you see a absolute onslaught of injuries or deaths or people going stupid with this. I don't think it can get worse at bodybuilding. Whatever our tolerance is with bodybuilding and probably powerlifting, you're not going to get more death or destruction than that. I mean, that is the worst case scenario for any enhanced games, because it's out in the open. People are taking insane amounts of gear, and they're also doing it with the dieting, with the reckless use of diuretics and a whole bunch of other things that are not fucking great. The fact of being a 300-pound bodybuilder and taking diuretics and taking grams and grams of shit for decades on end, that's a lot different than the type of protocol and the type of stress you're going to see in a 185-pound sprinter. I think you're most likely to see death and destruction with guys that are really heavy, that are incentivized to take insane amounts of shit, and that's usually just to take on more and more and more muscle tissue. Then there's an issue of even defining what unhealthy is, because unhealthy doesn't mean just at any given time you have a 10% greater chance of having a stroke or a heart attack. Unhealthy can be something that can cause harm to you right now, or it could be something that has a certain chance of causing harm downstream at the end of your life if you have a big population of people that did this steadily over time, as opposed to this other thing. We already have that with high blood pressure, with heart disease, with obesity, with diabetes. Now we're trying to address what our tolerance is to that with things like CTE. It's not just football. You have shit like bull riding. You have extreme sport. The question of what is healthy, I mean, people aren't even going to be able to define that. And eventually we're just going to end up at the point, I think, and they're probably banking on this, that people are just able to tolerate a certain amount of risk. They just have to be kind of led in that direction. That might also be the logical conclusion of all of this. Now, the big one I want to get to is the incentive for kids to use. Now, I struggle with this for a lot of reasons. Part of it goes back to the alcohol example I gave. There's a lot of shit that we have kids do that have risk that we're fine with or we don't care about quite as much. General sports is one of them. Sports is risky. It's dangerous. Parents are still being aware of CTE in the NFL, and they think it's soft to like pull their kids out of football. It's like, what? These helicopter parents just don't want their kids to get, a scrape on their elbow. It's like, well, you're in a sport, you're putting your kid in a sport that causes fucking brain damage. Like, are you kidding me? My nephew is in dirt bike racing. I've had to visit him in the hospital more than once. Last time he got like a punctured lung, he got like a laceration on his liver. Anytime there is a sport with risk that becomes popular, kids are going to be incentivized to do it, whether it's jumping off cliffs in squirrel suits, whether it's going to the X Games, fucking bull riding. Sport is dangerous. It requires a risk. So when I think of kids doing gear, I think of a dumbass parent having his kid fuck with his biology in a way that he doesn't understand, causing problems he doesn't know how to measure or mitigate. I don't think of what goes on, let's say at the Olympics, as gross as it might seem to give a 15-year-old gear. If you are in an impoverished country and they know that they have a good chance of taking your 15-year-old son who was born in a slum at 15 years old, hey, we're going to give you some hormones. It's not going to kill him. We're going to have him spend the next 10 to 15 years training to be an Olympic champion, and he's going to be like Michael Jordan in your hometown. Do you look at that the same? If you were in that situation, would you have the same lack of tolerance to that? And I don't bring that up to like say it's fine or that you shouldn't question it. I bring it up to challenge the knee-jerk reaction we have as far as what's okay and what's not okay with kids. It's a nuanced discussion, I hate to say, but your reaction is not based off some meticulous actuarial crunching of numbers that accurately manages risk versus reward. It's based off of intuition. The fact is, none of us really know the risk versus reward. But if I were to compare an organization that actually was engaged in monitoring, leading to new technologies that made shit safer, teaching people how to use responsibly, having an onboarding process that could take young athletes from point A to point B, that is infinitely better than what we have right now. It just is. If you think of sports as we have it right now as something you need to hold on to and keep from getting worse, what I just described is better than what we have right now because kids still use when they're young. Here's the success we have with getting kids to not drink, do drugs, engage in reckless sex or other behavior. All right. Here are the odds that you're going to keep kids from not using steroids if they get it in their head that it will improve their lives. Not only do you have something where the risk is less than alcohol, reckless sex, or other drugs, it just is as a matter of pure objective fact, but it also adds a direct, tangible benefit in a way that these other things don't. I hate to say it, guys, but Pandora's box has been open. So I think the faster we get to a point where we have better information, safer drugs, newer technologies that take away a lot of the things that we're worried about right now, the better off we'll be. There's no situation where we turn back the dial. It's just going to be people screaming in their puritanical voice, trying to keep the externalities, the consequences, the casualties in the dark so we don't look at them. I actually think there is a scenario where something like this could take us in that direction. I don't know that it will. I'm just saying I see it as something that could be. The questions are now like, what are we going to see? What's this actually going to do? Will it be popular? Everyone wants to see it. I think it's going to be interesting. People are going to tune in, but the marketing has to be on point. There's some things that can really derail this, or there's some things that could prop it up and make it a staple. It's going to hinge a lot on performances. They're trying to chase records. So there's a question, do they even have the talent in order to set or challenge these records? It could be that talent is such an important thing, and all those athletes are being taken up in other fields that the drug use really isn't that big of a thing, and you're going to have second-rate talent using drugs. So fucking what? They're not just going to come out and break records. It also could be that whatever cap did exist in the Olympics or in other sports that made people tiptoe, that once that cap gets taken off, you are going to see an explosion of numbers. I don't think that's quite going to be the case. Best case, you're going to see the good talent just deciding to go there instead of the other way around. If that's the case, it might take a couple rounds before you actually get sufficient talent. Who the fuck knows? We're all guessing here. Now, likelihood of injury, that's another one that I think is interesting. If athletes just start popping off muscles off the bone, if all these sprinters, right when the gun goes off, just leap off the blocks just to have their hamstring insertion detach from the bone, that's not going to be a good look. And I'm wondering how much of a possibility that is. Again, bodybuilding and weightlifting, even Olympic lifting, arguably, a lot of people on the sauce during competition. So if there are injury spikes, it's not going to be something that's super noticeable, I don't think. But you never know. You're going to see people in sports that aren't used to having the lid pulled off. In bodybuilding and powerlifting, you're kind of used to that. These other sports, not so much. So you could absolutely see some people that are idiots. These are first generation enhanced games athletes. Maybe. I'm going to be watching it like a redneck watching NASCAR. Like, I'm hoping for the record, but I'm also hoping for a couple of crashes. Now, whether or not this is a success and takes off and redefines how we look at sports, I do think it's going to be a step forward in normalizing hormone use, because if you take away your niche perspective of sports and you just look at humanity as a whole, humanity likes technology. We do not normally turn our nose up at things that allow us to do more. We don't turn our nose up at things that have huge amounts of risk and just make us feel good for a minute, let alone things that can actually improve multiple points of our quality of life and where the risk is much more manageable or less obvious. I mean, we embrace superficial shit, plastic surgery, weight loss surgery, pharmaceuticals for every aspect of life. The idea that the easiest way to add muscle, increase strength, performance, and a whole host of other markers, that people en masse are going to continue stigmatizing that because casual recreational lifters think that they're not lifting weights right. I don't think that's going to be a thing. I think we're on the cusp of people kind of redefining how they were looking at the balance of risk versus reward. If we see these athletes come out and because they can use openly, they can compete longer, they can come back from injury quicker, they don't suffer the insane health effects that everybody thinks they're going to suffer, if they perform better and the records go up, if it actually leads to new technology that makes drugs safer and gives better, more efficient ways for everybody to benefit from this stuff, and if they can actually provide for the athletes financially in a way that the Olympics don't, it's going to be kind of hard to keep that stigma attached. So that's all I got to say about that, guys. Let me know what you think. I know this is going to be a charged subject, but I do look forward to seeing what the dialogue is like after this, and I do look forward to seeing how this shifts the way that we see performance enhancement, sport, and everything else. No matter what, things probably aren't going to be the same after next year. So let me know what you guys think. Until next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.